Welcome to the Spotlight on creating pre-note authorizations for vendor payments in EFT processing for Sage Intacct. My name's Anne from Orchid Systems, and today I'm going to run through why you may need to create a pre-note, what a pre-note is, and when you would create them. Many banks and also the NACHA, the National Automated Clearing House, which enables automated clearinghouse or ACH payments, require account verification as part of the anti-fraud efforts and initiatives. NACHA's web debit account validation rule went into effect on the 19th of March 2021 and became enforceable on the 19th of March 2022. And many other financial institutions have implemented similar rules. There are a number of compliance methods to meet the web debit account validation rules from NACHA and similar rules from other banks. The pre-note authorization is one of these compliant methods. A pre-note authorization is a $0 transaction for the vendor's routing and account number, which is sent to the vendor's financial institution. If it is accepted, the vendor's details are then deemed to be valid. So when do you need to produce a pre-note? A pre-note depends on your financial institution. Some of them require it, some of them do not require it. If they do require it, it could be because you've got a new or an amended vendor's bank account details. And some banks or institutions require a pre-authorization for high-value transactions. So depending on your financial institution who's doing your EFT payments, I'm going to run through how you can create a pre-note file for them. Orchid's EFT processing has an EFT format per bank, per type of file that you need to produce for that bank. For example, your domestic payments or your international payments, wire payments, positive pay, pre-notes, etc. A pre-note is just a different EFT format that you use for the payments that you're going to make. Each bank or financial institution has its own specification, and some of them may use the industry standard ones like NACHA. Contact Orchid for the EFT format to use for your particular bank. But in this example, I'm going to use the EFT format NACHA and NACHA Pre-Note. Both these formats produce the same file layout, and you use a configurable option on the EFT bank for the zero value in the file. So when would you use NACHA and when would you use NACHA Pre-Note? You would use NACHA with the Pre-Note option selected when you do not want to change the vendor's settings. For example, you notice you've got a high value transaction and you want to send a pre-note for that high value transaction, like a one-off. But you would use NACHA Pre-Note for new and amended vendors' EFT details. So because the vendor is configured to produce the NACHA Pre-Note, it's a reminder that you need to create a pre-note file for the vendor. But in this case, you need to change the vendor's settings after the pre-note is accepted. In order to work with the NACHA and NACHA Pre-Note, on the AP vendor, you would configure those vendors that you want to do a normal payment. So these are existing vendors that you've done pre-notes for before. They would be configured for the NACHA EFT file format. And then for the new and amended AP vendors, you would configure them for the NACHA Pre-Note. And by default, on the EFT banks, for the NACHA format, you would have the pre-note set to N, and for the NACHA Pre-Note format, you would say that the pre-note was set to Y. In this first example, I'm going to show you how to use the NACHA Pre-Note format for new and amended vendors requiring authorization. On the AP vendor on the Orchid EFT tab, you would set the file type to NACHA Pre-Note for new vendors or for vendors where you're amending the bank account details and you want to create a pre-note file. Then when you create the AP payment, when you create and post the AP payment for these vendors, the next time that you run the EFT AP payment request screen, you will see all those vendors that require a Nacha Pre-Note. So you can select the Nacha Pre-Note file and click Generate. After doing this on the EFT files, you would download the Pre-Note file and upload it to your bank. And once the bank confirms that the file details are okay for all the vendors in the Pre-Note file, you would delete the EFT file. You will always have a record of the Pre-Note file being downloaded and then deleted. Then you would go back to the AP vendor and change the EFT file format from Nacha Pre-Note to Nacha, and then go to your EFT AP payment requests, select all the payments for the Nacha format, generate the file. Then you would download it on EFT files, upload to the bank, and once confirmed, you would confirm the EFT file. When creating a new vendor, when you're filling in the EFT details, or if you're amending an existing vendor's EFT details, and you want to create a pre-note file for that vendor next time you create a payment for the vendor, then you should select Nacha Pre-Note on the EFT file format. So for our Green Team Waste Management, we have selected Nacha Pre-Note, and similarly for our BHP account 4. And now when we run the EFT AP payment request, because we have a posted payment for these two vendors, they will show on our EFT AP payment requests as outstanding for the Nacha Pre-Note. So you could filter by format or just select the payments you want and click Generate. And this will create a Nacha Pre-Note file for those two payments with the vendor details for those two vendors. And on our EFT file list, we see the file containing those two payments. And we can see the format is Nacha Pre-Note. And from here we can view the file if we want to see the bank details, the vendor details, and the payment details. And from the EFT file list we can download the file. And when you download the file, EFT Processing will create you a pre-note file with all the vendor's details, and the amount will be 0. So here we have the Nacha Pre-Note, and when we go ahead and open this file, we see that the amounts in the file are 0. So this file can be uploaded to the bank, and when the bank confirms that the file has been accepted, that those vendor account details are correct, you can go ahead and delete this file. And delete will put those two payments back on the EFT AP payment request screen. And now you would go to your accounts payable vendors and edit the details of those two vendors and set their file type to Nacha. And now when you go back to the EFT AP payment requests, you will see those two payments now requiring the Nacha format. So you could select all for the Nacha format, select all, and generate the file. And now you would have a normal Nacha file with these 4 payments in, including the 2 vendors who the pre-note has just been accepted. We have now seen the recommended process for creating a Nacha Pre-Note file for new and amended vendors' bank account details. Now we'll look at the recommended process for one-off payments requiring authorization. In this case, your AP vendor would be set to Nacha because the vendor's bank account details would already have been approved. And once you have posted your AP payment, and maybe it's a high value payment and you know it needs a pre-note. So go to the EFT banks and on your file format set the pre-note option to yes. Then when you go to EFT AP payment requests, you would select those payments that you want to include in the pre-note file and generate the file. And then on your EFT file list, you would download the file, then upload it into the bank, and straight away hold the file so you know that this file has been uploaded to the bank, but you're waiting for confirmation. When the bank confirms the vendor details are okay, you would go back to the EFT bank record and set the pre-note option to N. Then back on EFT files, you would click refresh and then download that file and upload it to the bank. This new file will have the dollar values in. So having a look at the one-off pre-note process, on your EFT AP payment request, we notice that we have a large payment for this particular vendor. And we have noted on that record that the payment requires a pre-note. So this would be a case where we go to EFT Banks and edit the pre-note format for this particular bank. And we set the pre-note equal to yes. And now we would go to the AP payment requests, select the transaction that we want to include in a pre-note, and click generate. And now on our EFT file list, we have this new file where the pre-note value is set to yes. So we would download this file, and opening up that file, you can see the amounts are 0. So we would upload this to the bank and click hold. When the bank confirms that the details were correct, we could go back to the EFT bank record now set the pre-note to no, and back on our EFT file list we can refresh this file. So refresh will create us a new copy of that file with the new details in. So we can see that the pre-note is now set to no. And we still have the history of the Natcha file where the pre-note was set to yes. And that history file is linked to our new file. But now we can go ahead and download. And when we edit the file, we see that the dollar value is now in the file, and we can upload that to the bank. We have now seen the process to follow for one-off payments that you want to do a pre-note for. I have now shown you two methods that you can use to create the pre-note files. Using the Natcha pre-note EFT file type on the vendor, you have a clear audit trail of the files created. One will be created with the file type Natcha pre-note, and one will be created with the file type Natcha. And on the EFT vendor, as soon as you create a new vendor or make an amendment to their bank account details, changing the EFT file type to Natcha pre-note, it's a reminder when you come to making the payment that you need to create a pre-note for that vendor and payment. The disadvantage for this type is once you have got the pre-note confirmation, you would delete the pre-note file to make the payments ready again to be included in a Natcha file, and you need to select those payments twice, which is more error prone. But using the pre-note flag yes and no on the EFT bank, the AP payments only need to be selected once. But on your order trail, you'll have two files with the Nutcher type, and if you look in the details, one says the pre-note option was yes, and one says the pre-note option is no, but it's a little less obvious on the EFT file list. And when you come to make the payments for these vendors, there's no reminder on which payments or vendors need a pre-note file. Thank you for watching this pre-note video. Please go to our website for more information on EFT processing for Sage Intacct.